Welcome everybody to YouTube channel here on Corey Coffee and Conspiracy. I am now teaching to an empty classroom, and the reason being is on January the 8th, the Wednesday night, we normally teach to a whole classroom of people here at our church. It did not record. We had a mess up on the computer. We have since come back and we've ordered another computer, and we're going to have two computers, two monitors, two cameras, two mics. We're going to do everything we can do that we can no longer have these issues. But right now, this is a study that we're doing right now called The Bible and Ancient Technology. This is part 8 in the series. And if I didn't think this last part really wasn't that interesting, I don't know that I'd have came back. I'd have just accepted the fact that maybe God decided, you know what, this class was only for those that were in the classroom. But I also do know there are plenty of people online that come to this YouTube channel to find in-depth doctrinal teaching. They also come here to find maybe a biblical perspective of what's going on in the world. Some of you have emailed, you don't have a Bible-believing church in your area, and so sometimes you come to this, and therefore I feel obligated, responsible, and a necessity to continue to put this online so that those of you can get a help of that. Also know that we have Awana workers in our own church that are not allowed to sit in these classes because they're serving in other parts of our church, and so therefore I want to get this online for them too as well. And so as long as we can use technology to continue to advance the Word of God getting into people's lives, then I am all for it. So therefore, we're going to pick up tonight in part 8 of this series here, and this is our final video in the Bible and ancient technology, and not just ancient, just in technology in general. And we could continue down this road. I just wanted to get some fringe stuff. We've been dealing mainly with frequency and sound and the Bible, and we've looked at some major topics about frequency and how it affects us and how that is connected to the Word of God. If you want to know more of that, hit the first 7 up and you'll be fine. Now, before we get to this morning's study, we've been studying about stars in the Bible, and what we've actually done is we've showed you that stars never look the way you're described to in school or by NASA. If you take any, you can get this camera. It's called a P1000 camera. It's by Nikon. I've been told they've taken it off the shelf and you can no longer get it. Maybe you can buy a used one. I own this actual camera, and you can zoom in on stars with this camera right here and do better with this camera than you can with most telescopes. And therefore, when we studied this, we realized that each one of these stars, when you see them, they're a frequency that just keeps moving and keeps rolling. And especially in this one here, it looks like a wheel inside of a wheel, but all of these are constantly moving. Now, we came to Ezekiel chapter 10. You can also go into chapter 1 and see this. And it describes a wheel in a wheel when describing these cherubs and when it's beginning to describe the throne of God. And so the hypothesis, or that's not actually the word, but the theory for us is, are these wheel in a wheel the motor ability to move around? Is this the way the angelic host uses to facilitate as a vehicle from one dimension to the next? How does that work? We don't know. However, here's what I do know. Every single place in the Word of God, bar none, stars are always, without exception, a reference to the angelic beings. And so therefore what happens is we study from Rockefeller school systems, and we study from NASA, and we're taught a certain way. And then what we do is we take that lens of NASA and we go into the Bible and we try to read about it, and we go, wait a minute, this just doesn't make sense. Well, maybe the Bible's just using this as imagery. No, let's go to the Bible. Let's see what the Bible says. And then what we would do is distinguish truth based on it. Now, it's the wheel in a wheel. So the other night, it was actually January the 8th, the night of the original taping of this. That morning of January the 8th, my wife and I, we go to the gym every morning at 3:30, and we got back from the gym, and what you could notice is there was 3 planets. Mars, I believe Neptune was one of them, and Venus was another one, but they were lined up right next to this full moon. And so therefore, she comes out and takes our camera. This is the P1000. This is, I just wanted to show it to you and show it to the classroom. You can literally, and it's probably hard for you to see online based on looking at this on a computer, but if you saw these, you can see the pits and literally the crust of the moon and the indentions and all that area there. And we zoom in on this, and man, it is amazing what this camera does. And here's another shot. If you could, I mean, the detail that camera puts forth is unbelievable. Here's another one where she zooms out, and you can see the detail very, very well. This is a zoom in, really in on the end part of it. But I wanted you to notice that when she zoomed out, there was this little dot right here. Then there was another dot here, and out of frame is another dot. These are those 3 planets that were in line with the moon on January the 8th, 2025. This one here in particular is Mars. Now, we've been taught, now it's interesting, if you got some time, study it out. Planet is mentioned, I believe, one time in the Word of God. But what we've been taught about planets and what we've been taught about stars, I believe, has been wrong the whole time. But remember, Mars is a dead planet, supposedly, according to them, that it's a rusty red planet. And you can see that in the night sky. It has a red hue to it. And we got people like Elon and even Trump and all these guys talking about going to Mars and setting up a colony on Mars and all that good stuff. But however, I want you to see this Mars as she zooms in on it. Now, this zoomed in a little bit more, probably doesn't make a whole lot of difference to you. But if you zoom in right here, and I know you're online, I'm showing you on a television, but what you can see is a wheel in a wheel on Mars, and the way that description looks is the same as what a lot of stars look like, okay? Now, watch this. This is a video of her zooming in on this little dot that's going to move around your screen. And once again, if you're not able to get all that we're showing here because of the camera, because of the television, obviously, if you'll get a good telescope or if you'll get that good camera and zoom in, you'll be able to see it. But you can notice as she's zooming in on this, you see the wheel within the wheel. This thing has the exact same composition as that of a star. Now, they tell me it's a planet, it's Mars. Okay, I'm not here to argue with that. However, when I zoom in from Earth right here, from my driveway, and I zoom in on that, through that camera I have, it is nothing that they tell me about. It does not look anything like what I am described. Now, many of you may be thinking, well, Corey, you got a cheap camera. They've got millions and millions of dollars tied up in telescopes. And, you know, I understand that. I would just ask you to dig a little bit deeper, because when you zoom in, you can see the frequency of this camera. I mean, it is, you can just see the movement inside of here as she zooms in and out and snaps pictures. And I would encourage you, the next time you got Mars in plain visibility, which you do right now, get you a telescope and go out there and start looking through there. And then you start to realize there's a lot of frequency involved, not just in the things on this earth, but the things off planet. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you, we talked about direct energy weapons and the frequency that's involved in those. And we even talked about how you can put broccoli in a microwave and it'll heat it up and you can eat it, but if you put aluminum foil, it'll catch it on fire. Broccoli, a living organism, is able to have those microwaves go through it. The metal one, it'll actually catch fire, okay? It's interesting because when you study and you start seeing the metal here, this is from down in Maui. You see the metal that is burned. You see the cars that are burned. You see the tires are gone. But yet you still see on the palm trees the actual leaves. Now, an organism that's alive like broccoli doesn't catch fire in a microwave, but metal does. Okay, here's another thing. Okay, we see it again. This is in Malawi. And my wife and I were just there a couple years ago and walked down this very street. This building has collapsed, but yet the palm trees still have their palms on it. Now, how does any normal fire that you and I would know of Do this to a building, but leave that. But think more broccoli versus aluminum foil in your microwave, and you start to understand that. Now, here is a video I want you to show you out of what's going on in California right now and the fires that are going on out there. This is a short video, but I want you to notice, once again, we have a full tree here. You can see that tree. This is the original picture here. The fires are so bad that the building structure has collapsed. This is collapsed, and that tree is still there. Now, how is a fire coming in so hot, melting steel and collapsing those buildings, yet the tree's still going, right?
These images supplied by local media in LA tell an interesting story, don't they? I mean, it is just simply amazing, the destruction to buildings. But it seems to have spared much of the greenery. Yet it somehow destroyed a concrete and stucco building. But the very fuel that is being blamed for the massive spread remains intact in image after image. Not even churches made of concrete can survive, yet their shrubberies look impeccable. It makes you kind of wonder about things. Huh? Oh, I'm sure it means nothing, right?
Now, once again, they're saying it's a forest fire that is destroying all this. So the forest fire, the fuel in a forest fire is the actual forest. But yet here we have buildings that are going away, and yet the trees are still standing, which is why we think more in frequency. Now, here's another thing I was going to show. And once again, this is tying into the last 7 episodes that we've talked about. We'll get to tonight's episode here shortly, but I wanted you to see this. What you're seeing right here in this situation is there's a key to this color blue. And the president who just went out of office was caught on tape. You can go online and find this, speaking about the color blue and how these fires, whether it be in Maui, whether it be over in the one in South America, whether it be the ones in California, when the blue comes around, you automatically have a difference of what's going on where the fire. When blue shows up, fire doesn't affect it the same way, or this type of fire. We first saw this in Malawi, or excuse me, I keep saying Malawi, but in Maui, where there would be blue umbrellas at a restaurant still standing, the building's burnt to the ground. Okay, and we see this in multiple areas. And one of the things that this video, and it goes fast, but one of the things you can see, they have taken laser beams that create fire, and they'll spray it on like a green shirt. The shirt will catch on fire. Red shirt will catch on fire. You put it on a blue shirt, and it doesn't catch on fire. And so this is something that's been going on. All right, so now, obviously, it went quick, and you can go online and obviously study these things yourself. Feel free to. We're not going to go real deep into that. I just want to kind of tie that in from the last 7 weeks that we've been studying. But tonight, we're going to get into this thing called water is alive, and water has more than just plain old H2O, but the molecular structure of water changes, and we're going to talk about water having memory, water being alive and conscious. And I know it sounds strange, but just hear me out for a little bit and let's see what goes on here. I want you to start with number one. Water is the most common substance on earth. It's literally everywhere. And matter of fact, when NASA or whether any of these other guys, they go out here and they're looking for life on other planets, what's the first thing they look for? They look for water, because life cannot be sustained without water. Water is so important. It's the most important element on the planet for us outside of oxygen itself to breathe. Now watch this. Nothing is softer and more yielding than water, yet it tears down the strength of granite. It is essential to all life. Water is the only natural substance, and scientists can't even explain this yet. It says water is the only substance that is found in all 3 states: liquid, solid, which is obviously ice, and gas, which is steam. And we get these 3 states by just simply changing the temperature. No other element on the planet will do this. Listen, if you can take steel, And you can have it in hard form, and you can melt it and put it in liquid form, but you're never going to turn steel into steam, okay? You're not going to be able to get it into a vapor form, okay? Nothing else does this other than water. It's unique, and scientists can't figure this out. Now, the earth is made up of 75% water. Humans are made up of 75% water. That is very important that you get that down, because we're going to be dealing with that this evening. Now, you can generally last 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, and 3 minutes without air. So when we think about the essentials of life that you have to continue life going on, food, oxygen, and water. All right. Now, Romans 1:20 tells you that God used himself, the Godhead, as a pattern to make all things visible so that you can understand the invisible, which is the Godhead. So he builds everything in threes. Okay, so it's interesting, out of the 3 essential things you need to stay alive, he adds the 3s with it. Now, I understand there's exceptions to all these rules, but generally about 3 weeks without food and you'll pass away. 3 days without water and you'll die. 3 minutes without air and you'll die. And I get it that somebody's probably online going, oh, well, I know a guy that went 5 minutes without air. And I'm sure you have. I'm just saying, as an essential rule of thumb, that's what it is. Water is made of hydrogen and oxygen. Both are highly flammable, but yet we use them to put out fires. Isn't that interesting? God's so designed to take 2 things that are really, really flammable. You put hydrogen on a fire and it is going to go crazy. If you put oxygen on a fire, this is what we do at work. We take acetylene torches, which is acetylene, by taking that, adding oxygen, heating up these fires, and they burn hotter. Okay, same way is interesting is that God has so chosen to take those 2 elements, put the 2 together to put out fires, which is just really amazing, right? So, but when we study the Word of God and we study water, you understand you can't even get out of the 2nd verse before you find out where the water is. And notice he says, in the beginning God created the heaven and earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Okay? And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Right? Which I would tell you is a frequency issue. He moved upon them, and so therefore it's almost like he gave them a charge or an energy about them. But I also want you to understand that you and I are made of 75% water. 75 to 90% water is what a human is. Which means all of your DNA, all of that is essential. Water is an essential building block of your DNA, your molecules, your atoms. So 75% of your body is water, which is interesting because every molecule of water that is on this planet has been on here since the beginning. In other words, we don't get new water. The old water doesn't go away. It's just recycled, which means if you go back to verse 2, every human technically was present. Now, I understand your soul and your spirit wasn't there, but who you are and what makes your house or your tabernacle was present in verse 2 based on the fact that this water was upon the face of the earth and God's Spirit began to move on it. Now, we get to Exodus chapter 17, and you will find the first miracle ever performed in the Old Testament was Moses turning water into blood. Now, it's interesting that God would use water for the first miracle in the Old Testament. Then you get to the New Testament, John chapter 2, and we're going to have the first miracle ever performed by Christ. And what does he do? It involves water. And what is it? It's water turned into wine. Now, if you understand what wine is, it's a picture of blood. It is a picture of the blood that Christ shed for us. Obviously, this is why we have communion and so forth. Now, for those of you that are maybe, struggling there, remember, wine can be grape juice, wine can be grapes in the cluster, wine can be fermented. This class is not to discuss which one of those were. I'm just telling you, water into wine, water into blood in the Old Testament and New Testament. Now, Revelation 22:17, the Bible ends with water. So it begins with water, it ends with water. And the Spirit and the bride said, come, and let him that have hearing, he that heareth say, come, and let him that is athirst come, and whosoever will, let them take of the water of life freely. And you get to the end of it, there's a river coming out of the throne of God that is this pure water. And so water is essential to life, and it's literally bookmarks the Bible in the beginning and the end. That water is present at the first and the last. So now we're going to get into tonight's study, now that we've kind of got an overview of water, and I want to look at a guy named Dr. Emoto, and he dealt with water having consciousness. In other words, some of you are going to think, okay, he's crazy, man. Well, maybe I am a little crazy, but I'm letting you know that according to his scientific studies, water does have conscience, and it does get affected by the environment that it's in. And I'm not just talking about pollution and all that. I'm talking about the energy and the frequency and the attitudes and the emotion that we have around this water will affect it. And I'm going to show you this. Now, Dr. Emoto was a Japanese water scientist born in 1943 in Yokohama, Japan. He was an internationally renowned Japanese research author, scientist, and businessman. He graduated from Yokohama Municipal University Department of Humanities and Science, majoring in international relations. And additionally, he received a certification of Doctorate of Alternative Medicine from the Open Door of International University. One of the boldest claims of Dr. Emoto is that managed to prove scientifically was that water is sensitive to our thoughts, words, and feelings. Because of this, water can change its molecular structure according to the environment that it's introduced into. For instance, Dr. Emoto argued that prayer and heavy metal music could influence the molecular structure of water differently. Now, let's start by number one. I want you to understand the chemical composition of water never changes. Doesn't matter what you do to it. Water will always be 1 part hydrogen, 2 parts oxygen. H2O, okay? H, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. I'm sorry, I got that mixed up. That is the chemical composition. That never changes. But the molecular structure of how water structures itself will change. It's still H2O, but it changes based on its environment around it. And I'll explain. The easiest way to show that is, number one, water can be frozen, it can be steam, it can be in liquid form. Well, the chemical composition is still H2O. However, the molecular structure changed. Now, what he's going to show is it's on a deeper level than just steam, liquid, and solids. He's going to show you that it's even greater than that. Now watch this. All right? Let's...
Dr. Emoto, who did all this work with water, his first experiment was to put a bottle of water, have all of his students send negative energy. I hate you, you're stupid, you're a fool. Took that water, froze it in little petri dishes, bring it out, stick it under a microscope with a camera on top. It forms these big ugly black blobs. Take the same kind of water, another bottle, send positive energy to the water, freeze it, put it under the petri dish when it's melting, form beautiful snow crystals. So we know that two things were fascinating. Water has memory, and 85% of your body is made up of water. Your brain is made up of even more water. So when you're saying negative things to yourself, you're affecting yourself in a physiological way.
Now, okay. Just some of you that may sound like woo-woo science. Like, okay, great. You're trying to tell me that water has memory. You're telling me that if I'm negative to this water, it changes itself. Or if I'm happy to this water, it changes its structure. Okay, now, this is something you can actually put in petri dishes, get you a microscope at your house, and you can try this yourself. You can be mean to water and tell it how bad you think of it, and then you can turn around and be nice to water, freeze both of them, and put them underneath. Now, for those of you that are going, wait a minute, that sounds a little crazy. Now, don't forget, you're made up of 75% water. Your brain's actually more of that. It's anywhere from about 85 to 90% water in your brain. Now, God tells us in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. Now, if this science is correct, and water is affected by emotion around it, and God's made you and I 90% water in our brain and 75% water in the rest of our body, and that water is affected by motion, then it gives a whole new perspective that God's saying, look, if there's anything that you're going to think on, think about the things that are true, the things that are pure, the things that are honest, because therefore, if this is true, the science, it's more than just an emotional state for us. It comes down to a molecular structure of our body changes based on our thoughts, which means when you go to Proverbs 23:7 and God says, as a man thinketh, so is he, I think that's on a deeper level than just a mental situation. And whether your brain capacity says yes or no, I think it's more than that. I think it affects you. And I do know that you can teach in multiple cases that people's health is different based upon their thoughts. If somebody is constantly negative, if somebody is constantly dealing with negative issues, they tend to have more sickness in their life, where if you can stay positive and think on good things and think on happy things and think about true things like the Word of God, you have a tendency to have more health. Now, this is Dr. Emoto's work. And what he has done is what that man just described, where he takes his students and he has them think thoughts or say things to this water. And so this is love and gratitude. And then what he would do is, once you implement that emotion towards that water, he'd freeze it. And then they would see it underneath. This is love and gratitude, which is obviously perfectly aligned. This is honesty. Now notice the molecular structure has changed. It's different looking. However, the chemical composition is still the same. It's still H2O. Now, you get over here. This is interesting. Love of a husband for his wife. Now I want you to notice how there is a big cluster in the back with a small one in the front. Now what's interesting, God lets you know that the husband is the head of the wife, and he is the protector of his wife, and he is the one, when he speaks of being the head of the wife, it's not indicating I'm powerful over my wife. What it's saying is you're responsible to oversee her, and you're to love her the way Christ loved the church. And so even in nature, God has given his truth. Here is happiness. It looks almost like a diamond. This is eternity, and it's changed. This is the word, I can do it, and look at what it looks like. But notice right next to it is, I can't do it, meaning it's half put together and then half of it's broken. And so, which is interesting, because Henry Ford said, whether a man thinks he can or whether he thinks he can, he's right. If a person doesn't think they can ever accomplish anything, they never will. However, it may be more than that, what Henry Ford's speaking. Maybe it's more on a molecular level. This is hope over here. Now notice these beautiful patterns with this mainly positive view. These are water molecules. This is from a large polluted lake in Japan. Notice that the actual molecular structure, and look at it, it's just not in a great state. This is from a Yodo River that passed through a major city in Japan, and once again, it's a lot of chaos in the water. This water that he's got here was played by Bach's air for G string. So they played classical music to this water, and it changed it into this form. Okay, now it's interesting, all they did was play music, and the water starts to clean itself up. Heavy metal music, not Bach, but heavy metal is this. There's a lot of chaos. There's not a lot of structure. Essentially what heavy metal music is. All right? This is water from a dam before prayer. No structure at all. This is prayer being done around this water. They're not saying they're praying to the water. They're praying towards what they would consider their God, and all of a sudden the water changes because their attitude around it changed. Now, here's once again another same thing that where we were just explaining. On the left was a frozen from a polluted. They begin to have some blessings produced around it, and all of a sudden it changes. Now, here is before prayer. Here is after prayer. Now, according to the Chronicles, now this is an older book. Now check this out. There's this guy named Carl, he's an abbot or a father or a Catholic priest, and this is 1472, and he was arrested on the basis of false denunciation and interrogated in connection with having accused a certain prominent lady of falling ill. So in other words, they felt like he had caused her to fall ill because of who she was and who he was, and so they thought he was connected to black magic or sorcery. And so what they're going to do is they're going to hold him in a dungeon. And the abbot or the priest was given only a crust of stale bread every day, along with a dipper of rotten, stinking water. After 40 days, the prison warden noticed that the Father Carl had not gone in decline, but seemed to have gained his health and strength. Now think about it. He's had one morsel of stale bread and rotting, stinking water. This only served to convince the inquisitors that Abbott had connections with the dark forces. Later, he confessed under brutal torture that he had recited a prayer over the rotten water. He was given thanks to the Lord for bestowing these trials upon him, and after that, the water tasted bland and turned fresh. Now, once again, you may not believe that, and that's fine. I'm not here to convince you of that. I wasn't there. However, if Dr. Emoto is right, and prayer and happy thoughts and positive things change the molecular structure from polluted water into clean water, I don't know how all that works. I'm just telling you, man, they may be onto something right here. Now check this out. Now, if that's the case, and this is a true statement, and water is affected by the emotion around it, and prayer to your God actually can change the molecular structure of the water, how much of your food is actually made up of water? Now it's interesting, if that's true, then the whole idea of saying a blessing over a meal may be more than spiritual, it may be molecular. Now, for those of you that are, the Bible doesn't say that we're supposed to pray over a meal. Matter of fact, if you go back to the Old Testament in Deuteronomy, if you study that, it was actually, they were to give the blessing or the thanksgiving for that food after the meal. Now, I'm not telling you don't give blessing over your meal. I'm just trying to say maybe it's a little bit different if we're more positive around that than we realize. Now, here's another video I want you to see about water holding memory.
What you see here is water memory. You can do this experiment yourself just by showing an image to water for around 30 seconds and then freezing the water, and you will see a reflection of the image you showed it. This proves that water holds memory. It has consciousness. This is because water can change its structures depending on the vibrations it comes into contact with. This is where things start to get a bit crazy with words. Placing the word schizophrenia in water and then freezing it shows this image of a double-faced person. This proves that water is intelligent and is reacting to vibrations of the words. Now that you understand this concept, what do you think happens when you are drinking Monster Energy, or with cans which imprinted the word of death? You are drinking crystallized water with the imprinted vibration of death. You are filling 70% of your body, which is water, with the vibration of death. Tap water is mixed with sewage and all sorts of toxins inside of these facilities. Although they may remove some of the toxins from the water, the crystallized vibration of this water is still very bad. The ancients didn't just build beautiful water fountains for no reason.
Now, I don't know that I believe every word he said. However, it's very clear that water has memory. And one of the things I've done is I went out and bought about 30 Petri dishes. And what we're going to do as a church at some point, we're going to test this maybe with our Awana crew, and we're going to take images. We're going to let the water sit over the top of it. Then we're going to freeze it. This is stuff you could do at your house if you so chose to just get on Amazon, pay a couple bucks for some Petri dishes, have it mailed to you, put some water in there, put images on there, and you'd find out real quick whether this is pseudoscience or this is something legit. Now, depending on the age of a human being is made up of 70 to 90% water. An adult drinks approximately 2.5 liters of water each day in order to sustain his normal life function. Another 1.5 liters is absorbed through the skin during bathing and shower. That's one of the reasons why we as people need to understand that water filtering is a must in your home, because look at that. If you're ingesting 2.5% through your mouth orally, but yet he's letting you know you're taking 2.1 through your skin. Your skin absorbs everything. That's one of the reasons why the lotions you use and stuff you put on the skin, sunblock and all that other stuff, man, that stuff can be very dangerous to you because it's absorbed through the skin during that. All right? Water makes a long and difficult journey before arriving to our homes. We transport water through thousands of miles using high pressure. In nature, rivers and streams always flow along a smoothly curving course, but water supply system has multiple right angle turns. This natural structure of water breaks down more and more with each such turn. This water has deformed structure. It is devitalized and sucks energy out of the people, plants, and animals living in that house. So what he's saying is, when water flows in nature, it just smoothly flows. But in a pipe system through the city and in your house, there's a lot of 90-degree turns, which that water is hitting the edge of that pipe and turning. And what it's doing is deactivating the water, if you will. Plus, you got to also remember that this water is in this closed system that's recycled sewage, if you will. And so therefore, they're pumping that water through chemicals back through us. And therefore, we're getting this. Now, one of the things is water that is depleted of minerals and certain elements. If it doesn't have it, it's going to rob your body of those things. And therefore, if that water's going in and you're thinking, oh man, I'm hydrating, I'm getting going here, I'm drinking all the water they're telling me. Meanwhile, that water is robbing you of the essential elements you need in your life to make it happen. And so therefore, it's important that we are drinking the right water. Now, watch.
Did you know that water has the ability to remember substances it has come into contact with? This phenomenon is known as water memory. In the 1980s, French immunologist Jacques Benveniste conducted controversial experiments suggesting that water could retain memory even after the molecules of a substance were removed. Though met with skepticism, these findings sparked a heated debate in the scientific community. Water memory isn't just a theoretical concept, it's been explored in agriculture. Some farmers believe that exposing water to specific frequencies or intentions can enhance its memory, potentially influencing plant growth and vitality. In a bizarre twist, some alternative medicine practices suggest that water can remember the healing properties of substances it once contained, promoting the idea of using water as a vessel for natural remedies. It's like turning your glass of water into a holistic elixir.
Okay, so one of the things that we're in the early stages in a more of a holistic healing world is finding frequencies that heal the body, putting that frequency in water and allowing that water to go in, and as he said, work as like an elixir, if you will, to heal you. Now, here's what I would tell you. For every single person who takes a pharmaceutical pill, that pill has a certain frequency, and that frequency goes into your body, and that's essentially what's going on inside the body. Now, my problem is with most Western science is we think a pill covers it all. At some point, I think nutrition, I think cause of healing needs to come to the forefront, not just a reactionary. In other words, oh, you got high blood pressure, take this pill. Okay, well, how long do I need to take this? Well, forever. So it's not going to heal me? No, it's not going to heal you. Oh, so I'm going to take this for the rest of my life? Yep. So is there going to be any long-term effects on my liver having to filter this pill every day in my life? Oh, no, you should be fine. Okay, see, that part is where they lose me. And so therefore, instead of working on just a pill, maybe we work from a more of a molecular level of what is it that can heal the body that is natural that God has given us. And so water is the essential thing. Now, here's the thing. So the idea would be put something into the water that would end up getting into us, and therefore, since we're 75%, it would change the molecular setup of us. Now, I get it. You're going, oh, this is crazy. Really? Have you ever studied about Genesis chapter 30? So here's old Laban and Jacob, and there, he's went, 14 years getting a couple women. You know, he worked 7 years and got the wrong wife, which I still can't understand. But then he worked 7 more years and got another wife. And now he's like, hey, man, I've worked for you all these years. I want to bounce, man. Let me have my people to go, and I need the cattle. And so they make this agreement. And he's like, look, every speckled and spotted, lamb, they're going to go with me, and then I'll keep and you can keep the white ones. Now remember, it was odd for them to have speckled lamb. And so he was already stacked against the odds. And I want you to notice here, all right, to increase his flocks and diminish Laban's, Jacob instituted some sort of folk medicine selected breeding process. He took fresh cut branches of poplar, chestnut, and hazel trees, peeled the bark to create white strips on them. So in other words, he's got strips taken off the barks of these trees. Now notice here. Then placed and peeled the branches in all the watering troughs so that he would be directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. So in other words, these flocks are drinking water with these branches in it. Now remember, all these plants are a frequency. And so he's taking the specific branches, putting them in this water, and these flocks are going to come and drink from that water. When the flocks were in the heat, or in other words, when they were wanting to reproduce, they came to drink, and they mated in front of these branches, and they bore young that were streaked and speckled and spotted. Genesis 30, 38, and 39. It's unclear how these striped branches impacted the mating of the animal. The Bible simply records what Jacob did and the results in the flock with no explanation. In addition to increasing the number of spotted animals, Jacob also wanted to make sure that the spotted ones were stronger than the rest. He only placed the branches in troughs when the stronger females were in heat, but if the animals were weak, he would not place them there. The result was that the stronger of the flock were multicolored and the weaker were the normal color. In the end, Jacob grew exceedingly prosperous and came to own his own large flock, verse 43. Now, most people come to this and say, what Jacob was doing was some pseudoscience, and God intervened. Well, why didn't God just intervene anyway? Why did Jacob do any of that? And if it's pseudoscience, where did he learn it from? He just got a wild hair one day and said, you know what I'll do? I'll grab some trees, I'll cut them, and I'll put them in the water trough. Well, whatever he did, it worked. Now, to the non-believer or the halfway believer, somebody who supposedly believes the Bible, they just go, well, God intervened and did it. No, there's a scientific basis behind it, and I'm thinking to myself, maybe he understood some things about frequency, because remember, he's way closer to Genesis 6 than we are. And maybe he understood some things about frequency in the water that changed the composition of what these sheep were going to be. Now, Genesis 30:37, Jacob took his rods, green poplar and hazel and chestnuts, and piled white stakes in them, and made them white appeared, which were in the rods. And he set the rods which had piles before the flocks in the gutters and the watering troughs, and the flocks came to drink, that they should conceive, and they came to drink, and the flocks conceived before the rods, and brought forth cattle, ring straight, speckle, and spotted. All right. How about the pool of Bethesda? Justin just got done on Sunday mornings going through this part of John. And so what you have is the man who is empty, his legs doesn't work, and he's sitting by the pool. And when Jesus walked in there that day, you got to understand, there would have been hundreds and hundreds of people around this pool. The man even said, look, every time the angel troubles the water, I go to get in, and I can't do it. Now, here's the thing. What happened to the water when the angel, quote unquote, troubled it? Was it an issue of frequency that the angel put a frequency in the water and that frequency traveled through the water into the person that stepped in first and they were healed? Now, you may be thinking once again, well, that's just, that was a wives' tale and all these guys are sitting around. Okay, well, I get you having that mindset, but how long could that wives' tale last? At some point, people are going to go, I've been sitting here for 5 years and I've never seen an angel, trouble anything. I've never seen one person healed. So obviously, at some point, the angel did do this and people did get healed. However, what was going on? I tend to believe it was a frequency issue. Okay, now, I'm going to close with this, and this is something you can do on your own, and I definitely want to do this with our young people in this church and in this class. What you can do is take rice, boil this rice up, and make the rice with the water. And what you do is you divvy that rice from the same bowl up into 3 different jars. On each one of the jars, you're going to take one of the jars of rice and you're going to write love. In the other jar, you're going to write the word hate. On the third jar, you're not going to write anything, and you're going to look at that and ignore it. Now watch this. So each and every day, you're going to take this jar of rice, and you store all 3 of them in the exact same place. But once a day, take 1 jar of rice, the one that has love on it to it, open it up, tell it, or don't open it up, just keep it closed, but tell it you love it, and that you have feelings for it. And I know it does sound crazy. Maybe do this quietly and not let your neighbors know. But you tell this rice, I love you, I love you, I love you. Then take that same jar of rice and tell the other one that says hate, and just tell it you hate it, it's disgusting, you have no interest in it, and just tell it off, right? Then you grab that third one and do nothing with it. You just ignore it. You just have it sitting there. And over time, what happens is the jar with love in it, that you speak love to, doesn't mold as quick. The jar that has hate molds, and the jar that is ignored molds. But the one you spoke kind words to and love towards, it tended to last longer. And this thing is a experiment in which you can see right here with these ladies. And we'll let you watch this. Sorry about the volume, it's a little low, but we'll try to help you out. Most of this is the stuff we already taught about Dr. Emoto.
Okay, so it's the 21st of February 2015, and we are trying to recreate Dr. Emoto's rice experiment. We've tried to take out as many anomalies as we can, be sort of scientific and fair as possible, because we want to know if this works, that we did all we could and that it was right. So we've chosen 3 identical glass jars. We've cleaned them in the same water with the same amount of
clean and dry,
like bubbles. They've been dried the same. We've done the labels as identical as we can, to the point where you've only really got the first 3 letters of love and hate that are different, even the E's and everything are lined up. We've also got a blank label, so that if there's any like blockage of sunlight or anything like that, that's all going to be identical. We've done the rice in the pan, and we've stirred it, and we've added cold water to it to try and make it cold, so that if there's any hot pockets or any steam, that won't transfer as much to the jars. So yeah, so
cooled it with cold water, so it's really cold at the moment. It's going in cold, and I'm going to put a spoonful into each jar at a time, and as I put it in, I'm actually going to speak to the jar as I put it in. But I'm going to put a couple into each jar, so we're not taking one all out of one side, so it's getting mixed up with the rice. We can make sure that's even as well. With this one, I'm going to put that one in. I'm going to say I love you. Go well.
yes, I think this is going to get easier as the time goes on.
Hate you. Love you. Hate you.
I I really feel bad for the one on the end that's been ignored. It's not even joining in. I love you. Hate you.
Okay.
Is that all of it? Yeah. So they've all had, what was that?
They've had 2
three
spoonfuls
of
each.
each. Was it 2 or 3?
Or 2 or 3
Well, we'll see on the video.
But also, I'm going to close this one up. I do love you. Oh, I hate you.
Okay, so this is day 1, and we will monitor this and do our very best to make this fair, and see what happens in 30 days' time. So we've actually moved the rice. They were in their place for about 5 minutes, and we've moved them out here into kind of an outhouse side room, basically because we realised that they're on top of the microwave, and we figured the microwave might actually interfere with the experiment somewhat. So we've moved them out here, and we've both spoken to them again, and that's it. Okay, so we are 16 days into the experiment. It is March the 8th. We've pulled out our rice jars. We've had them outside in quite a cold room. As you can see on some of them, they've got a bit of condensation and things on them. So we've decided that we might move them in. We've been making sure that at least one of us goes out and speaks to them. We think possibly that we've both been doing it every day, but we're not quite sure. So we've got the I love you. We've got the I hate you. And the poor ignored one on the end. At first glance, we didn't really think much had happened. Hence one of the reasons why we wanted to move them in, sort of speed up or see if we could affect it in some way. However, we've had a good look now. The I love you jar, anyway, there we go. We've got a little bit stopped there. You can see right in the centre there, we've got a little bit of, almost like a little yellow hot spot there. Essentially not a lot, but it looks like it's going up as a slightly yellow, which is I love you. And then I hate you has got, you can see pretty clearly in the middle, keep still there, got a orangey bit, orangey red towards the back, on the I hate you.
That's brown.
And then the last one has got, again, sort of nothing except a bit of green mould there. The sort of more horrible looking mould of all of them, I would say, but yeah.
And it looks in the middle in there, look, if you look through it.
Yes, I thought that, like a sort of dark spot.
Yeah, looks like there's probably mould underneath. If you did it over, probably mould underneath.
So, we have definitely got results. What will happen in another, 14 days time? We'll wait and see. But yeah, exciting so far. Okay, so we have finished our rice experiment. 30 days, I believe, exactly, to the date. We've managed to keep it up. Well, I certainly have. I think if I've missed it at all, it's been spoken to once a day. So I would go in and say, I love you, with intent for that I love you one. I hate you, with intent that I hate you, and then we would ignore the last one completely. Yeah, like I said, I think if we've missed it, I've probably missed maybe 1, maximum 2 days out for the whole thing. So it's certainly had a consistent speaking to. It's also been in the same place. We were going to take it out and remove it from the sort of colder area that we put it in. However, we had noticed that they'd already started to change, so we figured we might as well. We could see a reaction, couldn't we?
Yeah.
So we decided to leave it where it was. So yeah, these are our results. We have I love you, which we've got a little bit of sort of orangey coloured underneath. There is one small bit of green there, but otherwise, as you can see, it is pretty white. So that's I love you. I hate you. looks like it's been bleeding. It's gone orangey, reddy,
Reddy brown.
pinky brown, and all the way around.
Yeah. What's it like underneath? Oh yeah. It's completely.
Very different against each other.
Yeah, hold the two bottoms up together side by side.
Like I said, there is definitely something in the I love you one, but they've all got yellow, and we've decided as well. They've all definitely had some sort of yellow decay.
Decayed, but
Quite obviously, this one's had a different kind of reaction, which is exciting. And then the last one.
and then the last one's
It's the poor ignored one.
which is that one, which is disgusting. It's
Proper
gone
green mould.
completely mouldy. Look at that. And it's smelly.
Yeah, they have all smelled a
It's
little bit.
really smelly.
I
This
can't work out which one is which. It's probably a little bit
Well, I
more
think
of them.
they're all escaping a bit.
They've all got
aren't they?
condensation in them as well, which we figured means obviously they've had either some sort of reaction in there, or maybe a little bit of air.
Well, as you can see, the rice experiment shows the ones that, now what's interesting to me was the one that was ignored, where there was no emotion given at all, even done worse, which is a clue that sometimes indifference is worse than hate. And so therefore we need to understand that when we deal with people. But it is interesting how that can be proven. You can study this on your own. So obviously go study, look into these things. These are simple little things you could do with maybe young people in your church, young people in homeschool, whatever it is you do. And man, you could have a good time with this. Even as adults, we can study this out. So if nothing else, we'll be back again this coming Wednesday night. So God bless you, and we'll see you the next time.